The CEO's husband suddenly took an unusual interest in me, bringing me an elaborate breakfast. But since I was suffering from terrible morning sickness, I gave it to his personal secretary. An hour later, a blood-curdling scream tore through the office. I ran to see what was happening and froze in my tracks. That morning, I had arrived at the office early as usual. The morning sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the thick binders of reports on my mahogany desk. I had barely sat down with the intention of reviewing some balance sheets when the door to my office swung open. Trevant walked in carrying a pale blue thermal food container, a high-end model I had never seen in our kitchen. Most surprising of all was the radiant smile he wore, a warm and strangely familiar smile I hadn't seen in a long time. He placed the thermal container on my desk with a gentle thud. "Good morning, baby. Happy 3rd anniversary. I wanted to do something special for you." I looked at him stunned and then lowered my gaze to the container. Trevant, the man who was always busy with endless meetings and constant business trips, had cooked breakfast for his wife himself today. He unscrewed the lid of the container while explaining tenderly, "Lately, I've noticed you looking pale, and I know work is stressing you out. I got up way before dawn this morning to slow cook some chitlins for you. Your favorite soul food to help you get your strength back. Eat them while they're hot." A dense steam rose, impregnating the air with that unmistakable, pungent aroma of chitlins, stewed with spices and peppers. If I had been the Zanaya of 6 months ago, I probably would have been moved to tears by this unusual gesture of attention. But ironically, in that moment, that smell became my worst nightmare. I was secretly 3 months pregnant, and morning sickness was torturing me without mercy. Every time I smelled something strong or distinctively animal-like, my stomach twisted in spasms, and a wave of nausea rose up my throat. I held my breath, swallowed hard, and forced a smile. "Thank you, Trevant. That's so thoughtful. But I actually just had toast at the house. I'm still stuffed." Trevant seemed surprised for an instant. The smile froze on his lips before he quickly recovered his usual composure. He pushed the container toward me, insisting with patience. "Tast? That's nothing. Eat a little of this for energy. I spent the whole morning cleaning and cooking these. Don't do me like that. They're still steaming." Kishia's eyes went wide with surprise, and then her expression shifted to one of jubilation, as if she had hit the lottery. She glanced at Trevant's retreating figure, checking for objections. Seeing he didn't oppose it, though he remained silent with a slightly annoyed expression, she grabbed the container with enthusiasm. In a sugary tone, she said, "Well, if you insist." "Thank you so much, Zanaya. I'll eat it all. Won't leave a drop. I'm sure anything the boss cooks is a meal fit for the gods." I watched Kalicia leave my office, hugging the container like it was a treasure, and I felt an immense relief at escaping the imminent heave. I tried to concentrate on work, turning the pages of financial reports, but the numbers danced before my eyes and my head spun. A sense of unease grew inside me like the heavy dark sky that precedes a storm. I poured myself a glass of lukewarm water and took small sips to calm the baby moving inside me. 3 years of waiting, and finally, heaven had taken pity on me, granting me this little life. I promised myself I would take care of my health and not let negative thoughts affect my child. About an hour later, while I was absorbed in typing, a loud thud was heard from the common work area, as if something heavy had fallen to the floor. Immediately after, a blood-curdling scream ripped through the silence of the entire floor. It wasn't a common scream of fear, but one loaded with extreme, sharp, and horrifying pain. My heart shrank. A bad feeling washed over me. I jumped up and ran out of my office. The scene I found left me frozen. Kishia was writhing on the floor next to her desk. The container of chitlins was overturned, its contents scattered everywhere. The penetrating smell of the stew mixed with the stench of vomit, creating an unbearable funk. Kalicia was clutching her belly tightly. Her beautiful face was now disfigured by pain, pale, and drained of blood. Her eyes were rolling back, and she was foaming at the mouth while her body convulsed uncontrollably like a seizure. But what terrified me most was that the lower part of her beige dress was slowly staining a deep crimson. It was blood, fresh blood flowing freely, soaking into the office carpet. Employees were running back and forth, panic-stricken. Screams and calls to 911 filled the air. I stood there, hands and legs trembling, a lump in my throat. What on earth was happening? Why was Kishia like this? It was the bowl of chitlins I had given her. The thought crossed my mind like a lightning bolt, sending a chill down my spine. At that precise moment, the door to the CEO's office slammed open. Trevant ran out with a look of panic I had never seen on him. He didn't run to help his employee, nor did he ask what was wrong. He stopped dead a few feet away, eyes wide, fixed on the pool of blood on the floor. I clearly saw the expression on his face change from stupor to fear and finally to a demented rage. He snapped his head up and his gaze, sharp as a dagger, locked onto me. It wasn't the look of a husband worried about his wife seeing such a horrible scene. Nor was it that of a boss pitying his employee. It was the look of a killer. Realizing his prey had narrowly escaped, he strode toward me and grabbed my arm with a force that made me cry out in pain. He hissed through his teeth, voice trembling with contained fury. "What did you do? Why? Why her?" That illogical and accusing question was like a bucket of ice water snapping me back to reality. Why was he asking what I had done? Why was he so disappointed that the one lying on the floor was Kishia and not me? I looked deeply into Trevant's bloodshot eyes and felt a terrifying truth begin to reveal itself. I slapped his hand away, trying to maintain composure, and responded with an icy voice. "What did I do? I just gave her the bowl of food you cooked. What are you thinking, Trevant? Were you expecting it to be me on the floor?" Trevant froze as if realizing he had said too much. He let go of my arm, took a step back, and wiped his hand over his face to hide his confusion and panic. The sound of ambulance sirens resonated from the street below, breaking the suffocating tension between us. The paramedics came up quickly, placed Kishia on a stretcher, and whisked her away. Trevant ran after them, but before entering the elevator, he turned to look at me with eyes that still distilled hatred and threat. He ordered me, "You have to come to the hospital, too. This happened because of the stew you gave her. Don't try to dodge your responsibility." I watched the elevator doors close and swallowed my tears. The husband I once loved and trusted blindly had revealed himself to be a complete stranger, a calculating and evil man. That bowl of chitlins, if it hadn't been for the nausea, and if I hadn't given it to Kishia, the person now lying in a pool of blood would be me, and my little baby would have shared my tragic fate. A cruel truth was beginning to take shape. Trevant didn't want to take care of me. He wanted to kill our child, or maybe even me. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. I would go to the hospital, not out of fear of his threats, but to witness with my own eyes the true face of this man. Sitting in the cold plastic chair of the waiting room, I interlaced my hands tightly to stop the trembling coursing through my body. The fluorescent light overhead reflected on the tiled floor, creating a spooky sense of loneliness. Trevant, the man with whom I had shared my life for 3 years, paced back and forth in front of the ER doors like a caged beast. He ran his hands through his hair, bit his nails, and occasionally shot me sideways glances, a mix of suspicion and hate, but didn't dare approach. Seeing his impeccable suit now wrinkled, I felt a deep bitterness. What was this man worried about? The life of his little mistress, or the fear that some dark secret would come to light? Finally, the ER doors opened, breaking the stifling silence. A middle-aged doctor walked out and removed his mask, revealing a serious and tired face. Trevant lunged at him like an arrow, voice cracking with tension. "Doctor, how is she? Is it serious?" I stood up slowly and approached, trying to keep my breathing calm. The doctor looked at both of us, his gaze lingering on Trevant a moment longer than normal before reporting slowly. The patient suffered acute poisoning. Luckily, she arrived in time and is out of danger. However, the cause of the severe hemorrhage was the ingestion of a large amount of misoprostol. The medical name made me frown, but for Trevant, it seemed to be a devastating blow. His face lost all color. His lips moved without emitting a sound. The doctor continued explaining in a firmer tone. "It's a drug used to induce uterine contractions, either to facilitate labor or to induce an abortion. With the extremely high dose we found in her gastric contents, It is clear this is intentional poisoning, not simple food poisoning. Following protocol, we have informed the police. Barely had he finished speaking when two uniformed officers appeared at the end of the hallway. They approached seriously and asked us to cooperate with the investigation. At that moment, Trevant seemed to snap back to reality. He hurriedly wiped beads of sweat from his forehead, attempting to regain the composure of the CEO he usually portrayed. He turned and pointed a finger at me, voice trembling, but full of accusation. "Officers, you need to investigate this thoroughly. This morning, I prepared a stew for my wife. She had the container in her office for a long time before giving it to Miss Kishia. I suspect my wife, out of unfounded jealousy, put something in it." I looked at Trevant, feeling as if someone were squeezing my heart. He already had his alibi ready. If I had eaten the stew, I would have lost my child. Since someone else ate it, he would blame me for poisoning. I took a deep breath, looked straight at the older officer, and said calmly, "I have no motive to do something like that. You can check the hallway cameras. Look for fingerprints on the medicine bottle if you find it. And most importantly, I would like to know why a stew my husband claims he prepared to take care of me contained an abortion drug, and why it affected his secretary so severely." The officer nodded, taking notes, and then asked the doctor a question that left us both breathless. "Doctor, what is the specific condition of the victim? What consequences has the use of this drug had?" The doctor sighed, his voice turning grave and sorrowful. The patient, Kessia, was 6 weeks pregnant due to the massive dose of the drug, which caused extremely violent uterine contractions. We regret to inform you that the fetus could not survive. The world around me seemed to freeze. I heard Trevant let out a choked moan. His legs gave way, and he collapsed into the waiting room chair. His face was unhinged, eyes wide open, staring into the void. So that was it. That young, beautiful secretary was carrying his child. And he himself, with his evil plan, destined for his own wife, had unknowingly ended the life of his illegitimate child, whose existence he probably wasn't even aware of. Seeing his pitiful state, I felt no satisfaction, only a wave of disgust rising in my throat. The love he had professed to me or the passion he felt for his mistress, it all reduced to nothing in the face of his selfishness and cruelty. After receiving the shocking information from the doctor, the police officers decided to question Trevant and me separately right there in the hospital. I was invited to sit in a quieter corner of the hallway across from the older officer, whose gaze was sharp but serene. He looked at me without judgment, almost with compassion, and asked kindly, "Ma'am, please relate in detail everything that happened from the moment you received the food container until the incident occurred. Try to be as precise as possible. Don't leave anything out, no matter how small it seems." I closed my eyes, rewinding the movie of that fateful morning. I told him how Trevant had appeared suddenly with excessive attention, something that had completely disappeared from our marriage in the last 6 months. I told him about the intense smell of the chitlins that triggered my nausea. I explained that I only opened the lid, looked, and closed it immediately. I emphasized every word from the moment he left the thermos on my desk until Miss Kia entered. I didn't move from my chair, nor did I open the container again. It was always in sight and completely untouched. I gave it to Kishia simply because I couldn't eat it, and she seemed enthusiastic about the idea. On the other side of the hallway, Trevant was being questioned by a younger officer. He insisted on the cleanliness of his cooking process. He claimed, "I went to the market myself, got in the kitchen, and prepped that stew from the crack of dawn. I'm a very meticulous person. I never let the housekeeper touch my wife's food. As soon as I finished, I put it in the thermos and threw anyone's hands." Trevant was convinced this statement would present him as an exemplary husband, while simultaneously pointing to me as the only suspect, the only person who had been in contact with the container in a closed room. But in his panic, he had forgotten something fundamental. The more he insisted he was the only one who prepared everything, the more he put the noose around his own neck if it was proven the poison was already in the stew from the beginning. When the questioning session paused, the older officer approached his colleague, who was taking notes on Trevant's statement. They exchanged a few words in low voices, casting furtive and significant glances toward Trevant. Noticing this, he became even more nervous. He jumped up, raising his voice more than usual to hide his fear. Investigate thoroughly. My wife has been very jealous lately. She's not right in the head. Who knows? Maybe she slipped the poison in when I left the office. I listened to every one of his cruel words. How painful. The man I once loved was now trying by all means to put me in prison to save himself. I stood up, walked over to them, looked Trevant directly in the face, and asked with surprising calm, "Trevant, if you think it was me, what would be my motive? To kill your secretary? Or are you afraid they'll discover that Stu wasn't for Kishia, but for me?" Trevant started. His eyes started nervously, avoiding my gaze. He stammered. "You? What nonsense are you talking about?" Time passed with agonizing slowness. Every minute of waiting for the lab results was mental torture. I remained seated in silence, hand resting gently on my belly in an instinctive gesture to protect the little being. Caught in the eye of the hurricane. Finally, a forensic technician came out with the results in hand. He announced in a grave voice, on the rim of the thermos and on the spoon, "We found fingerprints belonging to Mrs. Zanaya and the victim, Kishia, which matches the statements. However, the crucial point is that the toxic substance was completely dissolved in the stew, impregnating every piece of meat and juice. This proves the drug was added during cooking or immediately after, while the stew was still very hot and stirred in well, not simply sprinkled on top once the container was closed." This conclusion was like a bucket of ice water for Trevant, completely destroying the theory he had tried to construct to blame me. If I had added the drug upon receiving the thermos in the office, it wouldn't have dissolved so uniformly. Trevant's face changed color, passing from pale white to an ashy gray. He started rambling, losing control. "No, it can't be. Surely it was Kishia who took the medicine. That's it. She was pregnant. She wanted an abortion and took the pill before eating. You have to investigate her. Don't accuse an innocent man." I looked at the pathetic scene of my husband, feeling a mix of laughter and pity. The man who was once my pride was now revealed as a coward, incapable of facing the consequences of his acts. I raised my voice, cutting off his ravings firmly. "Trevant, stop kicking and screaming. If Kishia took the medicine on her own, why was it also in the stew? Are you going to say she took it and then vomited into the thermos? Does your explanation sound logical?" Trevant spun around abruptly, eyes bloodshot. "Shut up. What do you know? You hate me. You want to destroy me, and that's why you staged this whole circus. It was you. You slipped it in secretly when I wasn't looking." His obstinacy made even the police officer shake their heads, weary. The lead officer closed his folder and looked at Trevant with glacial coldness. "Mr. Dr. Trevant, your statement and the forensic results present many contradictions. We need you to accompany us to the station to clarify some matters. Furthermore, we will request the recordings from your car's dash cam and the security cameras in your home kitchen to verify the preparation process you described." Hearing the word cameras, Trevant jolted as if he had received an electric shock. I knew perfectly well we had a camera in the living room that pointed directly at the kitchen, and his luxury sedan had a camera recording all his trips. Those were the proofs that wouldn't lie. If he really added the drug to the stew, he undoubtedly would have left some trace. Trevant's gaze wavered violently. His initial confidence had vanished completely, giving way to the naked fear of a criminal before the bench. He knew the trap he had set for his wife was now closing around his own neck. I stood up, straightened my clothes, and looked at my despicable husband for the last time before they took him away. "Trevant, you once said this stew was full of your love. Now I understand that your love actually smells like poison. Luckily, fate wanted our child not to share the same luck as that poor baby." I left him standing there in the middle of the cold hospital hallway and walked away without looking back, silently thanking life for giving me a chance to survive and seek justice for myself and for the child I carried in my womb. Leaving the hospital, I didn't go home. I took a cab straight to the office. The sky was gray and lean with dark clouds swirling like an omen of a great storm, an exact reflection of my turbulent state of mind. Entering the building lobby, I felt curious stares and heard the whispers of the employees. The news of Kessia's poisoning had spread like a virus. Rumors were of all kinds, but the most malicious was that of the jealous boss, who, finding out her secretary was pregnant by her husband, had tried to poison her to teach her a lesson. Hearing those inventions hurt like knives. But I knew I couldn't break down now. I had to be strong, stand firm to discover the truth and clear my name. I went directly to my office and slammed the door, isolating myself from the gossip outside. Shortly after, someone knocked gently. It was Imani, my trusted assistant, who had been with me since the beginning of my career. She walked in with a worried face, but a look full of determination. She placed a flash drive on my desk and whispered, "Zanaya, I did what you asked. I pulled all the security camera footage from the building and the parking garage for this morning. I found something very strange." I plugged the drive into my computer and black and white images appeared on the screen. Imani pointed to the timestamp. "Look, Mr. Trevant's car entered the garage at 7:15 a.m., but he didn't get out of the elevator to come to your office until 8:15. Normally, it takes less than 5 minutes from the garage to here. Where was he during that hour? What did he do?" And my question froze my blood. An hour missing, more than enough time to carry out any dark plan. I looked closely at the screen, searching for more clues. Imani advanced the video to a recording from another camera in the basement emergency stairwell area, and look at this. Pay close attention to this person. On the screen appeared the silhouette of a man in a white shirt and a mask walking in a hurry. He was carrying a fairly large black trash bag and was heading stealthily from the elevator area toward the dumpster area behind the building instead of using the floor's trash cans. "It's DeAndre," I exclaimed, instantly recognizing his slightly hunched walk and characteristic hairstyle. DeAndre was Trevant's personal assistant and distant cousin, a man who followed his orders like a faithful dog. Why did he have to go?